Welcome to this week's Tech Explainer. Today, we're tracing how the smartphone sitting right there in your pocket actually connects to some massive, invisible global shifts. It's honestly fascinating how a seemingly tiny tweak in hardware can just cascade, almost like a domino effect, all the way into international law.
So, we'll be following this thematic ripple effect across 4 key stages today. First up, mobile innovations and market slump. Then we'll hit the AI hardware crisis. After that, the end of physical gaming. And finally, global tech regulations and privacy. Let's get right to it.
Starting off with Stage 1, Mobile Innovations and Market Slump. Let's take a look at what you physically hold in your hands every single day. The smartphone market right now, it is a wild, almost completely contradictory mix. We've got incredibly bizarre innovations on one side and some pretty grim financial realities on the other.
To fight off market saturation, companies are literally leaking these extreme, almost desperate specs just to generate some hype. Take the Xiaomi 18, for instance. We're talking dual 200-megapixel cameras and a massive 7,000 mAh battery. That is a total beast. Over at Apple, leaks suggest the standard iPhone 18 is going to feature a highly unusual 9 gigabytes of RAM. Now, why is that weird? Well, because memory almost always scales in binary steps, right? 4, 8, 16. So a 9 gigabyte chip isn't something you just pull off the shelf. It's a completely custom-ordered anomaly. And meanwhile, Samsung's display division is internally discussing a rollable smartphone, supposedly targeted for the first half of 2028. Rollable!
But honestly, all of this brilliantly highlights the sheer absurdity of modern tech marketing. Chip naming conventions have completely devolved into incomprehensible word salads. We're expecting Qualcomm's next generation to splinter into multiple variants, so between their Elite, Pro, and Max tags, and Intel's ultra-extreme numeric soup, it is getting quite literally impossible for the average consumer to have any idea what they're actually buying.
And hidden behind all this confusing marketing hype, brands are quietly consolidating just to survive. Get this, if you go to the OnePlus website in Germany right now, they have a banner literally redirecting you to buy an Oppo phone instead. They're even throwing in a 10% discount just to do it. It essentially signals the death of the OnePlus brand in certain European markets. They're pointing users straight to their parent companies since, both brands are owned by the exact same massive conglomerate, BBK Electronics.
And here's the stark reality behind why these brands are shrinking. 15.8 million. That's the total number of PC shipments in the US for the first quarter of the year. That represents a massive 7% slump. Consumers are just refusing to buy right now. And a huge driver of this hesitation is skyrocketing component costs, specifically the explosive price of memory and RAM.
Which perfectly tees up our second section, the AI hardware crisis. The crucial question here is, why are those components suddenly so unbelievably expensive? Well, it all comes down to the back-end hardware crisis fueled by artificial intelligence. I want you to think about the physical value of the internet for a second. We usually picture tech as just software floating around in the cloud, but that cloud relies on heavy metal down here on Earth. And that metal? It just became incredibly valuable.
The AI boom has made server components so astronomically expensive that organized crime rings are completely changing their targets. Recently, a truck carrying data center servers and copper cabling was robbed in transit. It was a $1 million heist. Thieves are literally targeting data center cables over traditional valuables like gold or cash simply because the black market for hardware is absolutely booming.
Massive corporations are absolutely scrambling to deal with this shortage. Meta has actually gone ahead and developed a custom chip so they can revert back to using 10-year-old DDR4 RAM for their non-computational server tasks. They're doing this purely to save money because modern RAM is just too expensive. On the flip side, Tencent is trying to secure its future by locking in a staggering $3 billion contract for RAM from the Chinese supplier CXMT. $3 billion.
To cope with these unique AI and server demands, the industry is churning out some hyper-specific wildcard hardware. For example, Intel quietly launched a 264-core Xeon processor with absolutely zero performance cores. It's all efficiency. Over in China, Lungsan launched the 3C3000, which is a custom 16-core server processor. And for extreme environments, a company called Silent PC built a fanless IP65 waterproof Ryzen AI rig. You could literally drop this computer into the ocean alongside the fish, and it would just keep processing data. It's wild.
Geopolitically, the stakes for securing this hardware are astronomical. As we speak, Taiwanese authorities are investigating and have actually raided Supermicro. This investigation centers on allegations that they bypassed U.S. sanctions to smuggle highly restricted NVIDIA AI servers straight into the Chinese market. It really shows just how absolutely desperate the global arms race for AI hardware has become.
Moving on to Section 3, the end of physical gaming. As hardware becomes this tightly controlled global battleground, it fundamentally changes how media and software are distributed to us. And this brings us to a really critical shift in gaming culture.
Sony has basically mapped out the explicit death of physical gaming media. Starting in late 2026, they'll begin closing down the PlayStation 3 and PS Vita digital stores. Then, by July 2027, it's a total digital shutdown for buying new content on those legacy consoles. But the real jaw-dropper here is January 2028, when Sony will allegedly stop licensing physical discs for new PlayStation games entirely.
The stakes here for you, the consumer, are incredibly high. Moving from discs to digital isn't just about saving shelf space or convenience. It means the end of true consumer ownership. Think about it. With a physical disc, you own it forever. With a digital storefront, you are essentially just renting a revocable right to download that game. If they decide to turn off the servers tomorrow, your purchase simply vanishes into thin air.
And in stark contrast to this digital-only future, we are seeing some completely absurd market hysteria for physical hardware. After the custom skin company Dbrand was forced by Valve to cancel their physical Steam Machine Companion Cube consoles, scalpers just went wild. Outdated physical Valve Steam development kits, we're talking boxes with 4-year-old CPUs and 0 controllers, are currently being sold successfully by scalpers on eBay for upwards of $3,100. People are just that desperate to actually hold tangible tech.
Speaking of Valve, they are quietly preparing their next major hardware leap. Hidden deep inside a recent software update, the classic game Portal 2 was given a playability rating for something called Steam Frames. Now, this is a quiet, official leak of Valve's unannounced leap into wearable VR or AR glasses. It shows they are actively preparing their game library for the next physical dimension of gaming.
Which brings us to our fourth and final section, global tech regulations and privacy. From leaked VR glasses to massive data center heists, all of this interconnected technology requires governance.
We are experiencing some rapid, heavy-handed policy shifts globally right now. In the EU, a €3 tariff is being slapped on cheap Chinese e-commerce packages from sites like Temu and Shein, basically to protect local markets. Over in Sweden, Google was just hit with a massive $1.5 billion fine by a court for anti-competitive behavior against the finance company Klarna. And in Russia, the government is rolling out a mandatory IMEI registration database by 2027. This means every single phone's physical hardware will be linked directly to a government registry for surveillance and access control.
Even down at the app level, companies are wrestling with safety and privacy. WhatsApp is rolling out a new feature that allows you to hide your phone number behind a username. Now, while this is fantastic for personal privacy, so you don't have to hand out your actual phone number to strangers, it immediately opens the door to brand impersonation as users just race to claim names that definitely don't belong to them.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder today. When governments are building massive databases to track your phone's hardware, when companies like Sony can just revoke your digital games, and when AI data centers are hoarding the world's physical components, who actually owns the tech in your life? Do you own it, or are you just renting space in their ecosystem? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.